Hello and welcome to Widnes Rugby Chat episode 31 of 2025. Myself, James Gordon and Mike Parsons back for this off-season episode that comes off the back of the IMG grading criteria announcement. Came as no surprise, really, Mike, that Widnes weren't selected to go into Super League either as part of the top 12 in the IMG criteria or indeed as one of the chosen ones, so to speak. No real surprise, though. What's your take on it?
No, nobody was falling off the chair when that news come out, was the James? But I think rightly so. Widnes didn't get the place. Firstly, on field, I know that doesn't matter as much, but on field we need to improve. There is no doubt about that. I think for me, it's about being the best you can be in the division that you're in, and then go from that point. But you know, as we're in the IMG world, even in the grading system, we're 19th placed. And even if the Super League expands again by another 4 teams and you was going off that ranking system, we still wouldn't be there as well. So I think fundamentally for me, you can dress it up however you want to, but I think fundamentally finishing 19th place in the IMG grading system and on field finishing outside the playoffs, I think it's safe to say there's plenty of work still left to do at the club.
Yeah, and looking at the scores, you'd have to say that there's only really 2 teams that are in touching distance of Widnes, so to speak. Featherstone and Barrow, the 2 teams immediately above Widnes. But then there's a jump of nearly 2 points to get to the 16th ranked team, which was London Broncos. So actually 2 IMG points is a fairly substantial amount, really, on the criteria. So it's not as if Widnes are only on the cusp of it. They're quite a way off. You went to the Vikings Voice event early this week, and we'll get some insight from you from that night. But the club themselves, I'm sure, if you're listening to this, you've probably already seen it. But the club themselves have posted the breakdown of the scores and just explain them a little bit. And we've dug out the scores from last year just to compare how things were. Widnes made a little bit of a song and dance over having the 4th biggest increase in IMG points, but that was only made possible because last year's was so horrifically done, and they were very low in score and in ranking last year.
There is that, James, but also when that was said, I was a little bit not impressed that stat kind of got read out, really, because for me, fourth in any race, any league, 4th improvement, what do you get for 4th? You know, well, it's a bit of a needless stat threw in there, really, for me.
And realistically, the points regained were largely to do with the stadium, and that was a failing of last year's application. It's not necessarily a case that Widnes have. I'm not taking away from things. It's not necessarily that they've done things better. They've just actually done the criteria properly this year and managed to get the point for the stadium, or the 1.5 points for the stadium that they should have got last year. And I think that's what it boils down to. But breaking down the pillars, so fandom, Widnes' score actually decreased from 3.3 to 2.95. Now, there were quite a few changes made by the RFL and IMG over this criteria, just because they'd realised that they'd put the thresholds especially for digital stuff, quite low. So I think every team was hitting the target they'd set for website visits, as an example. So they increased the thresholds for social media followers and total engagements and things like that. But they also reduced the number of points that was actually on offer as well. So whereas you could get 0.5 points for your website visits last year, the maximum you could get this year was 0.375. Likewise, For engagements, the most you could get was 0.8. This year it was 0.6, and last year it was 0.2, and this year it's 0.15. So Widnes, although they lost points, largely they stagnated in terms of the numbers, or had a small increase in terms of follower numbers. They actually did really well in terms of increasing engagements. But of course, because the points threshold had changed, it didn't really make an impact on the overall score. The one area that the club did invest in this year was streaming the games, which got them the 0.75 points, which helped offset some of the lost points from the other area. And then attendance is another part of that, but I think that effectively stayed the same because it's averaged out over 3 years. So Widnes get 1.5 points for attendance out of a possible 2.5, but to go up, average crowds would have to go over 3,000, and the figures say that last season was 2,161. I think what's notable about that, Mike, as well, is it would appear that what's being announced as the attendance is still not the attendance that's being audited, if that makes sense. Because 2,100, the attendance, I'm just trying to get the figures up here, but the average attendance based on what was announced at games was certainly more than 2,100.
Yeah, I think it's 2005, 2006, wasn't it, around that area? But yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? 'Cause obviously, it's counting all your season ticket holders and all that type of thing, and then not everybody does come the game, so it is a bit of a grey area, isn't it, for fans to kind of understand that point. But I think in terms of what you've just read through there, James, I think the two bits in that section and that I think the club should be massively going after, first and foremost, is, obviously the attendance is the sell. If you're more successful on the pitch, you're engaging with your kids, you're improving the match day experience, that attendance goes up. But I think in terms of the social media side of things, look, it's no secret. I spent a lot of time around the women's team the last couple of weeks, and I think what they do incredibly well, and it's by no means my bag at all, but in the modern day that we live in, it's massive, and that is the TikTok account. And the way they manage theirs, it gets a heck of a lot of viewers. And I think the men need to be not the men's team, but the social media team at Widnes needs to be taking a leaf out of their book and looking to do something on TikTok, because it is a massive platform. It's not my bag, like I've just said, but it's looking outside of your lane, isn't it? And looking around you and seeing what the youth of today are growing up with. And that is certainly a platform that, if you're 4, 5, 6, you're growing up in a generation where TikTok is your Facebook, it is your Twitter. It's one of the most used platforms there is out there.
Yeah, I actually think Lee have done a really good job in that sort of space. I sort of noticed it by accident. I did a video at a Lee game, and the amount of engagement it got from young Lee fans who obviously bought into the Leopards' journey, it was quite. I've not seen any other club get that level of engagement that they do. So it shows that if you do it right, it can get you there. Like you say, I think the fandom score, I mean, you can get 5. I think Widnes to get 2.95 isn't too bad. I don't know whether there's the ceiling for when you're in the Championship. I think if you could get 3.5, I think that's probably the max you're going to be able to get. Like you say, attendance, I'd like to think Widnes could have averaged 3,000, but like you say, if they were winning every week, maybe you'd get to that. So maybe that comes with the performance. Speaking of the performance, Widnes's points went up from 1.82 to 1.94, so only a small 0.12-ish increase from last year. That was, of course, largely because of the finishing in the playoffs last year. Obviously, what you want from performances, if you win the championship, you get a decent size boost. I actually think that Toulouse winning the championship is what got them in the Super League, because if you take away the points that they got for that, they would have finished 14th, and I'm sure they would have got bumped for London had they finished 14th.
Yeah, 100% agree with you on that one in terms of Toulouse. But yeah, as for Widnes, there's no beating around the bush for me. And our whole championship journey since the relegation of Super League, on the whole, over the time we've been in the championship, we need to be better on the field. That is 100% a fact. Yes, we got in the playoffs last year, and that was great, but here we are again, and it's another season where we didn't, and you can't escape that fact.
Yeah, and I was on BBC Merseyside on Friday, and they asked me about it, and I was like, at the bottom of the line is Widnes have been in the playoffs 1 out of 6 seasons in the championship. If any other club was getting elevated to Super League with that record, then Widnes fans would be up in arms. So I think the bottom line is Widnes have got to find a way of achieving the playoffs as a minimum standard for a consistent length of time before they even think that they can go up to Super League. Now, of course, we don't know what the format's going to be next season, so we'll wait and see for that.
The bottom line for me is a club like Widnes, and I'm not speaking through biasness here, but if Widnes was regularly finishing in the top 2, top 3 of the championship and going further and even winning the championship, there's no Super League club that won't want Widnes in because of what they bring attendances. There's a talent pool within the town that is a constant conveyor belt that probably since the academy's gone and players obviously going to bigger clubs gets overlooked. Facilities, spot on. All right, there's the argument of the eye pitch. But if you was achieving and doing the business on the field regularly and you was knocking on that Super League door, the bottom line is most of the clubs would be behind the Widnes bid. And if you sort that out, that's where you get your momentum.
Yeah, I suppose one of the main areas that we probably all know that Widnes need improvement is in terms of finance. The finance score was down to 1.75. Interestingly, in 2023, in the first year that they did the grade and the dummy run, Widnes actually scored 2.25. So they've lost 0.5 points over the last 2 years. I actually don't think the finance score was too bad, to be honest. The centralised turnover, the turnover jump, you get 0.5 for a turnover of 500,000 or more. To jump up another point, you'd need to turn over 1.25 million. So that without knowing exactly what Widnes' turnover is, that's a decent jump, especially as it's non-centralised turnover as well. So you can't include prize money and central funding and stuff like that. That's a tough gig. That I think for a part-time club to be able to turn over 1.25 million outside of Super League, that's a difficult one to get to.
I think with that finance pillar, you're kind of knocking on the door of the territory of, look, you're going to do a hell of a lot better with that pillar if you've got a wealthy benefactor within your club for many different reasons. For me, I think the points that we scored where it was, it's good to see because of our recent past is obviously the finances seem to be well looked after and well in order, where the club is absolutely in a stable position. And for me, going back to what I've kind of was touching on before, for me, it's all about on-field performance. For me, that's what I go the rugby to watch. So in terms of the IMG structure and as a whole, for me, it's good to know and good to see that the club is okay financially. Obviously, we do need investment. There's no doubt about that. But you've just got to keep going, haven't you, and try and be the best you can be and try and attract more more investment by doing so.
Yeah, and to be fair, a couple more points just before we move on is the percentage of turnover that isn't centralised. They got the max points for that, so that basically means that the club's making its money. It's not just relying on the central funding; it's actually making a decent percentage of its turnover itself. There's also the adjusted profit. The club made a profit in 2024, a small profit, but it's averaged out over 3 years. So if Widnes can post a profit in the next 2 years, then they'll get an extra 0.25 points at some point. Like you say, the one that stands out is the owner investment. You can get 0.5 points, but Widnes didn't get any. They've got to have 100 grand over a 3-year average. And they just didn't. There was a 0.25 deduction for not. It was something to do with assurance. It was basically getting the accounts audited in a certain way, but the club noted on the website that they didn't see any value in doing it because it wasn't going to affect them getting a Super League place. So that was the finance one. Stadium was the big one that let Widnes down last year. Well, they managed to get the points up from 0.66 last year to 1.9925, as should have always been the case. Widnes got the maximum 1.5 points for the stadium. The utilisation figure, of course, is a tough one for Widnes, 0.24 out of 1, because average crowd is quite small in a big stadium. Primacy of tenure was one that they didn't get last year, so managed to get that. I know people mentioned the big screen and the advertising boards, but it's just not worth investing. If you were when you were Bradford and that was making that 0.25 points might make the difference between you making it or not, then yeah, you'd go for it. But where Widnes are at the moment, there's just no value in doing that. And then the final one was community. Is still one as it was last year, although the club do feel like they've identified possible area to grow that by providing services across other areas. So you went to the event, Mike, on Monday, and from the chats that I've had with you since, and having been to the club since, there wasn't a massive amount that came out of it, but just give us a bit of a summary or a general run through of what went on.
Yeah, so it was obviously Stuart Murphy took the stage mainly, talking through the pillars and the scoring system, like we've done really. Earlier in the evening, Becky Webb, Jenny Moss, they took the stage with Amy Wood to talk about their achievements with the women's team. That was really good to see them on stage. A member of the learning disability team, he got up as well, so that was really good to listen to them. But regarding the IMG structure itself, as you'd expect, Stuart, he was quite positive about the situation. They've obviously been working on this a long time, and I think that the message was they are comfortable where they are in terms of a club. They know what areas that they want to improve on that we've just discussed. They're thoroughly aware of that. And then the stage was really open for questions. And obviously some people took the opportunity to do so. It went off track a little bit as sometimes then things do. But I think the bottom line is we are where we are, James. We're a part-time club. We don't have a massive amount of investment. We do need investment. There was talk. There are interested parties coming on board. Obviously, not too much detail was given away about that, which you can expect. But up until then, you as a club and as supporters, we've just got to do our bit, haven't we? And get our season tickets, get our merchandise, and spend our pounds where we can, and hopefully that the club improves on the field. next season in 2026 and builds on the positives of this year. And I know we've gone through that list there, and we've pulled things out that we're not happy with, and so on and so forth, and rightly so. But there's a lot of good things going on as well. For me, building a relationship with the women's team is massive to bring more spectators and eyeballs to their games, but make sure that they're staying for the men's game and they're a part of it. And in the Bridge Suite, that's an easy way of getting attendances boosted, because the girls get healthy crowds, and the people who come and watch them, they're already integrated in rugby league through watching their girls play. So you've got an opportunity there to keep a group of supporters for the men's game. So that's just one, which I think's a no-brainer, and I think the club needs to massively improve on the relationship in terms of the women's team. But on field as well, that's obviously another area. There's no hiding it. If you've got a winning team, it's a lot easier sell. And I think so far, the recruits who have come in, they're probably better than the recruits who come in this time last year as far. And then obviously it was Tim Holmes' first night as well, which I'm sure we'll touch upon in a minute. And I've got to be honest, I thought he probably stole the show for me, like his passion and how he delivered the night, and how and his speech and what he was saying. I think that's a real smart move for the club, getting Tim back. He's somebody who people trust and have a lot of respect for. So I know he's got to have a hell of a lot of ideas up his sleeve. So it'll be interesting to see what Tim delivers to the table as well.
I hope that passion is allowed to be able to rub off on everyone else. You know what I mean? Because that's what it needs. It needs, when you're running a part-time club, you need that passion to rub off on other people. That's how you persuade sponsors to come on board. That's how you persuade players to come on board in some regard. But yeah, I think the on the field, I think more so than ever now, it's got to be a priority, because I'm at the stage now where I feel like you can tick these boxes, whatever. But if you're winning on the pitch and you're doing well, people will naturally talk about you. And we know that Widnes have got, okay, they let themselves down last year with the stadium score, but where Widnes' IMG score now is probably the minimum it would ever possibly be. Like where they're at the moment, that's like Widnes' base score. The main way they can improve that is by doing well on the pitch, increasing the performance score. And I think now they've got back to that base level. It's like, right, we need to look at being in the playoffs every year as a minimum and get people talking about you. And it's easy for us to sit here and say that you need to build a competitive team, you need to have money to build a competitive team, etc., etc. But I think now we don't know what's going to happen with the format. We don't know what's going to happen with promotion relegation. It seems like promotion relegation might be back on the agenda, but I actually think that would be a massive positive for Widnes, because I think it's fairly evident that although Widnes have got the facilities and the fan base and the history and all that, it's fairly evident that we're not going to be able to get to Super League under the IMG criteria. That's not a criticism of anyone. I just think the way the criteria is set up, it's not set up for a club like Widnes to go up.
No, and do you know what as well, James? I think with the rumour of promotion and relegation going, I think that's kind of one of the phases of this exit plan of how we as a sport can get out of this IMG system, because I think it's just one of the early signs.
But it's much better for Widnes, because all of a sudden then, next season, if you're doing well, and I've said this, I think I've said this to loads of people, and I've probably said it on here. when Widnes were doing well last season, they'd won the first 4 or 5 games, and people are talking to you saying, "Oh, they're going to get promoted this year," and you had to turn around to them and say, "Oh, there's no promotion. It's decided by this stupid criteria." All of a sudden, by bringing promotion relegation back, if Widnes win the first 4 or 5 games next year, the crowds all of a sudden go up because people are thinking, "Oh, we might do well." But also, it means that if Alan uncovers some gems, or he's got him playing well, or whatever, and you build momentum, you might just sneak it. You might be able to sneak it, and it almost feels like it's like the investment talk. It almost feels like there's people waiting for Widnes to get to Super League, and then they'll jump on it. But of course, you've got to get there, but with promotion relegation, you can sneak into the playoffs in 6th. I mean, I know the format's changing, but you can sneak in and go up. And I think that's all. That's all. As from a fan's point of view, that's all that people need. Do you know what I mean? The biggest issue at the moment is if you're saying to fans who aren't in Super League now that you can't get in unless you get this IMG criteria, it's like, for God's sake. Whereas if all of a sudden it's about, well, if you win, you can get in. All it takes is you get a bit lucky with recruitment, you get some decent players in, you get some players in cheap who punch above the weight, you win a few games, and you never know where you might get to. And so actually, I think that I hope that gets ratified, because I genuinely think that's the best thing for Widnes. Because ultimately, if Widnes were to get promoted, if Widnes were to win the championship, like you touched on before, no one's going to worry about Widnes going up, because they know they've got the facilities, they know they've got the fan base, they know they bring something to the table in Super League. The bit that's lacking at the moment is they've not been able to win the championship or get close to. A shift towards promotion relegation might just encourage a bit more progress on that front.
Absolutely, and I think we can speak there for the wider rugby league world. A lot of fans, I'm not saying there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds living in Widnes because of that reason, but there are definitely some that are put off going the rugby because they can't be bothered understanding the IMG system, and they don't have faith in the rugby league structure. So straight away, it's a difficult sell, and I know for a fact that that's putting people off from other clubs. But it doesn't just stop there with the performance. Everything you've said is spot on. For me, sport's about winning and jeopardy and going to game and being excited. And if you win that game, what's going to happen in the next game? And it goes on and on and on to either you get promoted or you get relegated, whatever end of the table you're at. That's what excites fans. That's what gets sports people, men and women, into stadiums. But also as well, if I've got £1 million and I walk into a fresh sport looking to invest, that I've gone with someone and I'm wanting to get involved, and then they sat me down and went through that grading system in comparison to a structure where, well, I can come in and invest my money and however I want to, and there's a route to the top level, it put me off. Like, you're basically telling people, when potential investors, the game is on an Excel spreadsheet, and that's how it comes across to fans.
Yeah. There's a meeting on Friday, I believe, where they're hoping to discuss what the format of the championship's going to be. As all we know at the moment is the 21 teams. There's been some speculation over how the fixture's going to play out. I have no doubt whatsoever that it will change in the next couple of years, because I haven't heard any real sensible suggestion. But hopefully that gets ironed out. I think I've heard there might be a top 10 playoff is one of the ones that I've heard.
I think we've had every different version you could possibly have at this point, James.
I just hope that it gets ratified soon. Like I say, I'm still surprised, and I know that clubs have to because they need the money. It still surprises me that clubs have gone with season ticket sales already, because how are you selling that to fans at the moment? You have no idea. We don't know how many home games there's going to be. You don't know who you're going to be playing at home. You don't know when the games are going to be. It's just,
Well, that's it.
I have
Supporters could
sympathy
be
with the
getting
club.
a bargain, or supporters could be getting ripped off. No one
Oh, yeah.
knows. And I don't like. To be fair, I absolutely do sympathise with the club owners. I really do on that front.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I have sympathy with the clubs. Obviously, it's the clubs who are in these meetings, but it should have been sorted. It should have been sorted much sooner than it has been. I get that they had to wait for Super League to decide whether it was going from 12 to 14, but they'd sort of already decided to merge the competitions. What would they have done if Super League had stayed at 12? Would they have had 23 in the league? So they knew what was coming to a point. But yeah, it'd be nice to get a little bit of clarification, especially if they are bringing promotion relegation back, because then all of a sudden you're thinking, well, we're in a 21 team league. Who are we going to play? Do we think we're going to make the top 4 or top 3? Or it'd be nice to get to that stage and away from talking about spreadsheets and things like that. On the subject of that, Widnes have announced Jack Bibby's return on a 2-year deal. He played on loan and did very well actually on loan, in my opinion. So that's another solid signing made, Mike.
Yeah, I think just echo what you say. I think as a club and where we are with Jack's age, his location, Wigan Ways, 24, his build, his size, that is your perfect championship signing if you're Widnes and where we are at the moment. I really like Jack as a player. I think he's coming into his prime years, and he probably just needs a home to settle at. If you look at his loan history at Huddersfield, but what I really liked about Jack was he got better in every game, and it got to a point where I think it's fair to say Widnes was heavily reliant on Dan Murray, and thank God he put the amount of games together he did. But you started to see towards the end of the season where Dan had come off and like Jack had come on, and it felt like you wasn't losing anything. And like I say, he's good ball carrier, good tackler, good minutes, and I think he's a signing that, with his age, he's got it in him to be one of the top championship middles if he knuckles down.
Yeah, I quite like the combination he had with Lewis Hall coming off the bench. I actually thought that was a good. That double sub every week worked quite nicely for that period. I wonder where Jake Bibby's up to, because of course he's being released by Huddersfield as well. It'd be interesting to see. He's probably waiting for a Super League deal. We probably expect to see a bit more movement. I think with the Super League teams now confirmed, you'll probably have players who are waiting to see what's going on with that start to sign in places. Of course, pre-season will be due to start in probably a month's time. So you'd expect that you want to try and get some as much as your business done as possible before pre-season starts.
I think just going back to the Vikings voice evening, the IMG breakdown, there was a hint, well, more than a hint, that the magic number in terms of players in the squad will be 26. So that kind of gives you an inkling of where the club are going and how many's left to come.
Where are they up to? 22 at the moment, is it? 22? Can't remember. Yeah, like I said, we still got to wait and see what's happening with the dual reg, because we're expecting that to change. But I think at the moment it's still fairly early, isn't it? I think there's still plenty of movement in the market. So we'll wait and see what transpires. Yeah, I don't know what we've not done one since they signed Kieran Taylor either from North Wales Crusaders, who's an interesting pick up?
Yeah, I think Kieran he's applied his trade in League One for a while, and we was interested in him last year, but we didn't quite get it over the line. Back rower or centre, I have a feeling personally he might develop into a back rower, but he offers that bit of versatility, doesn't he? And you can't help but think that might be a signing that enables Max Roberts to be able to play one position and just focus on that. Because Max, sometimes being that type of player, you can be so versatile and you're always the first player who gets moved, and it can be of a detriment to you sometimes, and it doesn't give you that opportunity to nail down one jersey. And I like what I see with Max. I think he's a good, honest player, and I've liked his transition into the pack. So I think that signing of Kieran Taylor, it gives us another option when there are injuries of slotting somebody into centre rather than having to move Max. And of course, we lose Rodri Lloyd as well, who also had that versatility value as well.
Yeah, he played every game he played last season for Crusaders was at centre, so it will be interesting to see how that transpires. You'd expect Jack Owens and Joe Edge are going to be the first choice centres next season. Where else are you thinking bodies need adding, Mike?
I think to quote an old saying from you, James, I don't think you can have too many middles. Yeah, I'd like. Look, I mean, with the players we've got left, I think you need a winger, don't you? You need a winger to be pushing for a starting jersey, because we missed Ryan Ince last year, but I think if we're being honest, the scoring of the outside backs was pretty poor, if we're being honest, in terms of assists and in terms of try scoring, bar one or two. Reece Williams, he was the top try scorer, and he let's face it, he didn't play a huge amount of games, did he?
And he scored a lot of them right at the start of the year as well, didn't he? I think he had 9 after 6 or 7 games.
Yeah, I think I'm being a bit kind. To be honest, the scoring power from the outside backs was pretty poor. And firstly, it'd be down to them players to obviously improve, and I'm sure that'll be on their agenda to do so. But I think what it also means is they need pressure for their first team jersey. So definitely a winger. I'd say at least one back rower for me, and another middle.
Yeah, I suppose in some ways you're reliant on who becomes available. But I think there's so many unknowns at the moment, isn't there? You're almost it's almost one of them off seasons where you're just going to end up with who you end up with. No, because you're going to go into the season, and it's not like any other season where you know who's going to be where, because obviously you've lost 3 teams. Salford are presumably going to pop up somewhere. You've got all these League One teams. Some of them are recruiting fairly strongly, so they're going to be better than perhaps you would anticipate them to be normally. Then you've got the possible imbalance of the fixture list, where an average team, might finish higher than you expect because they've got easier fixtures. And yeah, I think at the moment it's very hard to sort of get a handle on where you might be. And I think it's probably going to be like that until you probably get to February.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, just to brush over what I just said, I think a winger within view to be a starting winger. I think a starting back rower and another middle forward, and then another maybe utility forward. I think that'd be my 4 if we're going to go with the number of 26. But yeah, I think I've been quite vocal in terms of a couple of the re-signings, the length of contract, question marks for me. But I do see the value this year of keeping the nucleus of that squad together. Not necessarily all on the 2-year deals that most have got, but keeping it together and being safe with what you have and having confidence to go, right, we've got these reliable group of players and we do need to add quality, we'll do that. But instead of upsetting the apple cart too much, stay structured and safe and just build up on it, just simply because, like you say, the league system's all over the place. You've got teams going up to Super League who are shedding players. It's a real manic market, and I think it'll be a real late market as well. I think there'll be players hanging around the game that have probably had 2 contracts offered to them, and will be looking to elsewhere.
I noticed like Halifax have lost Brandon Douglas, and I think Jouffre's going, and you look at that and think, oh. But then all of a sudden, Jordan Lilly's dropping out of Bradford, and Kieran Gill's being released by Bradford because he doesn't want to go full time. So he's gone to Sheffield, and like you say, there's going to be a lot of movement where decent players are actually going to move to a club that they'll improve.
It's a good example, Kieran Gill. If Bradford are a championship team, there is no way Kieran Gill is moving, is he?
Yeah. So
there's a lot of them type of players coming up,
and Sheffield have managed to pick him up. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out. I think, yeah, who knows what the makeup of it's gonna be like. The other thing with the 2-year deals is because of the contract, and we've talked about this before. Because of the contract, they're allowed to speak to them from December the 1st. So the 2-year deal thing, the more players you can get on 2-year deals, the more it removes that distraction of having your existing players from December the 1st. They can talk to anyone else, and that. And I'm not saying that that's justification for having players on 2-year deals, but it does remove that element of, well, straight away you've had them for a month of pre-season and already they can speak to other clubs. Now, I think what Widnes have demonstrated is when you do want to move a player on who's on contract, you can. We saw it with Liam Kirk and Martin Riley and players like that. So actually, if you've got a player signed up on a 2-year deal, it's like Riley is a good example, was on a 2-year deal. He went after 18 months. Now, I suppose you could make the argument if he was on a 1-year deal, he probably wouldn't have got the second year. Yeah. Having been injured for the whole first year. But I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying about some of them, but I think it's actually sensible if you're deciding to keep players to get them on 2-year deals, because it removes that element of doubt, I think.
I'm not against 2-year deals by any means. There's just, for me, 2 or 3 players within there I was a bit scratching my head. Like, just one in particular was Danny Langtry. Now, as a rugby player, I love Danny Langtry. I think he's everything you want in a back rower. But his injury record over the past 3 seasons has been troubling. To then put him on a 2-year deal, that does not make sense to me whatsoever. And the age he is as well in his career and the time in his career. If he does have a really good season on a 1-year deal, I'm sure he'd want to stay at Widnes at the time of his career and where he lives and where he's from. So that's just one example where I'd be questioning that decision. It's not necessarily the 2 years, it's sometimes it's the choice of player it's been spent on.
So, right, so we've gone through IMG. Anything else from your side, Mike? Have we got any questions this week?
No questions this week because they was getting aimed at the stage on Monday, but we will put something out. I think we're going to keep going through the off-season, aren't we? And there's going to be a couple of surprises along the way, I think, for people. So we'll keep your eyes peeled, and we will put something out to get more questions in.
Yeah, I have got. To be honest, I've been sat on this for ages. I've got. I had a really good sit down with Jack Owens around his testimonial, so I might put that out as an episode in the coming weeks over the off season, where basically talk to him from his start of his rugby journey all the way through his rugby career, his first spell at Widnes, and obviously his spells elsewhere, and him coming back to the club. I did it as a video actually around his testimonial, and I've always thought, I should release that as a podcast so people can listen. But we'll try and do that, and we're hoping to sit down with a few people from the club as well.
Absolutely. I've got a question for you, James, before we sign off.
Go on.
Did the right teams go into Super League?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I say, I'm convinced that London would have been in if Toulouse hadn't won the grand final. If Toulouse hadn't won the grand final, London would have been in instead of Toulouse. I do think Toulouse deserve a shot in. I know they were in it a season, but I think they do deserve. The top 3 teams went up, didn't they? So I don't think you can have any qualms over it. The right team came down, the right teams went up. It'll be interesting to see how Super League's like. I like the noise around bringing promotion relegation back. I think that would be great. I know that it's not great for the team that gets relegated, but I just think you need that element of risk and excitement.
You do, mate, and let's have it right. Look what's happened at Salford this year, and that's with no promotion and relegation.
And that's the thing. And the other thing is, you look at IMG. Well, all they've been doing anyway is relegating the bottom team and putting the top team up anyway. Wakefield came up for London last season. Toulouse have come up for Salford this season. So what difference does it make? But opening up that promotion relegation means that if Joe Bloggs wants to put 5 million into Widnes, he can put 5 million into Widnes and bring whoever he wants in. Have a crack at, like Oldham's a good example. Yeah. The guy at Oldham, if you bring promotion relegation in, all of a sudden he's like, we're a year from Super League. Whereas at the moment, he doesn't know how many years from Super League he is, because he could put in 10 million into the team. But if they don't get enough social media followers, or, do you know what I mean? They're not going to get up. So I think that'd be a massive shot in the arm for people. So hopefully that'll get ratified in the next few weeks.
Couldn't agree any more on that point.
Brilliant. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Do leave your comments and your questions on the Facebook page, Widnes Rugby League fans, and get me or Mike on Twitter. Thanks as always for your support and for listening, and we'll see you next time.